Good morning, Dr. Brad.
Hello, Curt.
Happy to see your smiling face.
Always a pleasure.
Yes, Brad has just moved one of his last offspring into an apartment.
That's right.
So he's usually been working for what, 4 or 5 hours before we talk.
That's right.
And sometimes he's been helping children move, and other times he's been riding horses until he has no core energy left. But we're seeing a fresh faced Brad this morning anyway.
Here we are.
I was up all night watching the tragedy in Russia, so
I am trying to even process that. It's like, whoa, that is an unexpected event.
I don't think it's an unexpected event, but it's way louder than I expected. So I have one point I want to make about it, right? You know, every time we've done an event, we've not just my group, but other groups have done it. It's really easy to get 25,000 guys, right? It's not hard at all to get 20. You know, that's about actually, you can fit 20 to 50,000 guys in a city center, right? Before it starts getting, you know, that's a lot of people. That's basically what a stadium fills, right?
Right.
Now, Prigozhin's got 25,000 guys. And ISIS had, depending on whose numbers you look at, could have been 6,000, but they give numbers of 10,000, 11,000 to 15,000. Very small numbers. So I guess I want to make the point that Russia's got the same territorial problem we do, right? Is that it's freaking huge.
Yes.
Right. And so when we say it's not, it takes 2 million guys. I'm like, it doesn't take 2 million guys. It takes 10,000 to get started, 25,000 to get rolling. Eventually end up with 100,000 and it's all over. But the thing is, so you can make a very successful revolution with a very small number of men, because that's all it ever takes. Because one of the things they teach you in political science is that it's actually the organizational, the civilizations, the state's capacity to organize is based on picking up margins, small movements in the margins before they escalate, because they actually have a very limited ability to concentrate forces. And so the point I want to make here is that for those people who think it's not possible for 20,000, 25,000 men to pull off a revolution, they're wrong, because I've been there and seen it and done it. Right? It takes, what it does is it takes 2 million, so you don't have to kill anybody.
You don't have to what?
Kill anybody.
Oh.
So this is my real point here, which is our mission is to prevent having the 10,000, 25,000 people turn into a bloody house-to-house war on the scale of the wars of religion, and instead turn up with a 2 million person protest that doesn't have to have any bloodshed. So that's my attempt to take advantage of present crisis, even though I can't believe he can get away with it. Although every military group he's run into just folds so far. But I just can't see this working, because I mean, if Putin's at least reliable, even if he's wrong, but Prigozhin's a bit of a crazy.
I am watching the show and just ears.
Yeah, I just don't see that happening. But anyway, so whether he succeeds or not, that's irrelevant. But there's always a lesson to be learned from watching how it takes a very small number of people to make very large changes in the polity. Okay, now I said my piece.
Yeah, that one surprised me very much today.
It surprised me how
I
It's
did
like
not, unexpected. It's just like, whoa, that was unexpected. It's out of the blue.
certain things were interesting, like planes have transponders. And so I've told you and everybody else, one of my jobs the night that we had the revolution in Ukraine was that I sat there watching the president's plane drive down to Dubai. Of course, it was full of money, right? And he wasn't on it. We thought he was on it, right? So he'd gone into Russia. But we saw the same effect happen in Russia this morning. In the early hours, we saw those planes start moving around. And so that's what I felt was the tell, right? If you just, like I said, if Putin had come on and said this isn't going anywhere, it's, but that didn't happen. And what I see Prigozhin doing is talking about Moscow, but he's actually capturing military bases along there and resources. So I don't know. Is it going to work? I can't believe it. I mean, I don't see it, but you never know. It's Russia.
Right.
It's run by warlords, essentially. They may be largely economic warlords, but it's a warlord country. And it's depressing from my standpoint when I look at how successful the judiciary has been incrementally improving things, right, in Russia, right, and how unsuccessful the government has been at producing a modern, stable economy instead of trying to restore past glories. Anyway, it's exasperating.
I watched the show, and it's just among the many things that are now new hanging chads, right?
Yes, the new hanging chads.
And it is the science is still not complete. Looks like you're processing.
Anyway, I have all this stuff. I was spending some time on Russian language Telegram. It's American conspiracies are conspiracies and oppression narratives exist, but they're still considered fringe. But in Russia, that's why I've teased them forever. Like my Russian friends, like, what is it with you guys in pseudoscience and all this other stuff, right? And I just have never understood
Russians.
The Russians penchant for things like perpetual motion machines and shit like that. I mean, they're just always doing something ridiculous, right? And it's right. So it's just, so
I ran into a Russian guy that was he was on about a kind of honey, right? And it's like a perpetual motion machine for the body, right? He's just trying to sell all these strange honeys, and I'm like, okay, and that was interesting. And it's like goes to this spiritualism,
yes.
Blavatsky, right?
Exactly.
And Rasputin.
Yeah. There is a deep want of that in the Russian soul, which is, of course, reasonable if you understand them and their circumstance and history. But anyway, I've always found it. So anyway, Russian Telegram channels are the that level of conspiracy theory, pseudoscience, nonsense, whatever, is like ours turned up to 10, except it's not coming out of the fringes. It's coming out of people who you'd think would know better.
Huh.
And it's, I mean, I'm taking off the table that a lot of conspiracies here have turned out to be right. I mean, I'm taking that off. No.
So, you just ignore that fact for a moment.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking.
I know, Curt. It goes like this. It goes to this premise, which is like this: wouldn't you like it if the people you thought were crazy 20 years ago actually just stayed crazy?
I'm thinking about chemtrails and that kind of stuff, right? So,
right.
So I mean, yeah. Well, so the thing I noticed, and I've complained to you in the audience about this a bunch of times. is that the problem I have with conservative thinking is you have a bunch of systemic thinkers, right? I was sitting in on a whole bunch of right-wing Twitter spaces. They're basically audio things, like last night by people I won't mention because I don't want them to feel picked on. Right? So so I'm listening to this stuff, and you have all these guys who actually think pretty clearly, right? But they've actually never been responsible for any number of people,
Okay.
right? And they've never worked in the military. They've never worked in a business of any size. They've never managed people of any scale. And so the big problem I have with the conservatives is that they just like the thing I pick on women about, which is they try to scale the personal to the political and it fails. Conservative men do the same thing. They try to scale the petty, which is the what people do, to scale, and you can't do it at scale. You can't do any of this at scale, because the reason you're in a position at scale is because a whole bunch of people want you there, precisely because you're effing predictable, right? I mean, you don't have power. People cede it to you,
Right.
right? You collect the power that people cede to you, right? And so the conservatives make this mistake all the time. And so, one of the things I try to do whenever I see something that the opposition does stupid or that we do stupid is I try to say, how is that an expression of sex differences in cognition? Because that's where it all originates, right?
Right.
And so the problem with conservatives, they don't, if it's just like I say, I only really enjoy talking to other CEOs and politicians and people who've had responsibility for a large number of people, is because, and military guys, right, is because that's actually what makes you the male equivalent of the female who hasn't had children. So does it make so women who haven't children, their emotions go put in the wrong place, right? They try to get their emotions and it goes wrong. The same thing with guys if they haven't had responsibility for others, politically. In other words, infant responsibility and adult responsibility. They haven't had that. And so they can't scale their thinking. So they think the kind of stupid shit we do between each other at the petty level is something you can get away with at the larger level.
Right.
And you can't. And so, it's like, so when I see this stuff, I'm like, well, you've never been in a room where, you might be in a room where you're the smartest guy, but that's not a lot of competition. But when you're in the realms of power, so to speak, whether it's commercial, financial, military, political, you're out there and you're with people who are there because they're competent, right? They're smart, maybe up or below you, but mostly because they're competent in the domain, and they have customers. They might be customers like a military has his subordinates as customers.
Right.
It might be the financial sector as he has investors and whatever as the businesses customers. It might be the commercial sector where you have customers. It might be the political sector where you have voters and the donors and special interests as customers.
Right.
But when you start having customers, right, you have to consider that you're acting on the behalf of customers because your power comes from them. It's not in you, right? It's in them. So I get frustrated with conservatives because they play this game of not being able to scale it. And I was kind of disappointed last night because you had quite a few pretty smart guys in here. They're smart in the sense that they're not uninformed.
Right.
They actually listen to the news. They're right. They actually have studied history or philosophy or military history in particular. They've studied this stuff. They're up on current events. They've been because they're observant and systematizing. They think about the world. The problem is they still think about leaders as using the psychology of people at their level.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I understand it. It's like they regard it as a personal, willful behavioral function.
Correct. When it's not, it's
It's more deterministic and based upon the base from which they stem.
exactly. And so, of course, when you get threats, like Mr. Prigozhin's obviously under threat, he's known that for a while. So when you get under threats, then you might display more personally defensive behavior. But when you're working on the side of an organization, like Mr. Putin, right, who has, he runs things by pay out. I mean, that's how he does things, is fear and bribes. So, and this is not a stupid guy, right? So, and most people who are in meritocratic businesses aren't stupid.
Right.
Even Ayatollahs, I mean, they're fundamentally corrupt businessmen, right? That's how they are, but they're not stupid. So, we talk about Gaddafi, right? He's not stupid for the tribal people. He was stupid because he tried to apply tribal reasoning outside of the tribal domain into the international arena, which is where, it works fine inside tribal, but it works really bad outside tribal, because now it's not admirable and heroic. You're just a problem that needs to be made to go away. Whereas if you're in a tribal society, you're exercising power, people feel safety under you, which is partly why Putin's so successful, is people feel safe under you. So anyway, so what am I really trying to get across here? I'm trying to get across that a series of very similar arguments about the conservative side of the movement is, it doesn't matter if you're right morally, ethically, politically, if you lack the skill to understand how to apply that at scale. And so this is back to our triangle problem, right? The right is, the left is better at organizing by agitation, but they're very basically uninformed or ignorant. It's just emotional. The right is really good at educating, but in what? In Christian nationalism, in fascism, in authoritarianism. I mean, fascism, authoritarian, and my scale, which would be the rule of law. I mean, the rule of law takes smart people. It's not like I don't understand this, right? Right. I'm a rule of law. It takes a fairly high IQ population, which is what I would prefer, right? But then again, it benefits everybody, even not. Right? It's just less emotionally securing because it's based on merit rather than authority. So you have all these people who they understand what they understand. They're capable in what they understand, but what they understand doesn't scale.
Right.
Is that am I making my point, or am I painting too many dots, too many stars in the constellation, and it's not coming together?
No, so the issue is that you're talking to people that are of the right wing mindset, but they fail to understand the failure of the system that they espouse to scale.
Because the people that are more empowered than they are do understand that. They may be wrong about what's right and moral and just, but they do understand how to scale. And conservatives don't. And this is one of those weird natural conflicts that arises between the masculine systemic and feminine empathizing.
What's that?
Is that men are less agreeable, so they're more dependent on the self for discretionary decision making, and women are more agreeable and then more dependent on others for decision making.
Okay.
So getting the left to act together is very easy. even if the outcome would be bad. Getting the right to act together is very difficult, even though the outcome would be good. This is one of those
Paradox of
I
history.
keep telling people there's no paradoxes. Well, it's not a paradox, it's a problem. Right? It's like,
Yes.
in other words, depends on which use. Depends if you use the generalized term of paradox or the specific term of paradox.
Okay.
A paradox, a thing can't be right side up and upside down at the same time. Right?
Okay.
So if something appears to be right side up and upside down at the wrong time, that's a paradox. But in this case, it's just those are how the two things behave. And so it's easy to organize the left, but because organization is temporal, but the intertemporal consequence of their temporal organization is failure. See where I'm going with this? And the organization right is intertemporal, but the ability to organize temporally is a problem, right? A resistance because everybody's dependent on their own judgment. And so, but even though if you organize intertemporally toward an intertemporal end, it will come out to be positive. So this is what's really, I keep trying to figure out if nature's got some fucking cruel insight here. And I actually think it's the right one, which
What's
is
that?
the equilibrium between the two. Right? The nature doesn't know what's good.
Right.
So the equilibrium, it just basically sets up calculations.
Right.
And whatever can calculates what's good. Right. So that's it. And sometimes the calculation goes bad, right? Leftism, and sometimes the calculation goes right, conservatism. But it turns out to be way harder to make the calculation go right at scale than evolution has yet compensated for. The reason is that the left needs to be large, the right needs to be many and small that federate. So it's large, authoritarian, distributed, meritocratic. And the problem is those two things organize and divide the labor of problem solving and time very differently.
Yes.
It makes me think that we just need to speciate entirely and let the left sort of disappear off the earth.
Right. Grind themselves into nothing.
Just, yeah.
They won't tolerate it. They can't let you be.
Because you're the only producers. Well, it's like can I go off on this? Not can I switch it to another direction?
Of course.
Because this is where my friend, what I'll call Twist, was talking about with me yesterday. I'm not giving anything away. I would never give anything away. But he was talking about how, well, this is a problem with the female versus male in the dating market, right? Is that it's asymmetric now because they can get all the value of men indirectly instead of the value of men directly. Whereas men can only get the value of women directly. They can't get the value of women indirectly. Right. So this is the natural problem that we're facing. And so it's broken the equilibrium between the sexes in the dating market. And so, of course, the only option here is the Atlas Shrugged argument, which is the political argument, the libertarian political argument of it's the male, the military argument of we won't protect you then. The libertarian argument, which would say we won't trade with you then. And the relationship argument, which is we won't provide services and redistribution for you then. So, the solution for men, of course, is to stop providing services to women, right? Which is a boycott, basically, because that's what's happening on the other side. You think this going? It's not going to happen. So you end up with these. You can use it though to understand how markets can fail when the good in a market that's dependent upon the interpersonal transfer is then indirected, just like the state has become the father, the state has become the mentor, the state has become everything. which has removed the need for and demonstration of responsibility through the male hierarchy. I was going to say I'm not smart enough to talk about anything smart today, but apparently I can. So, anyway.
That's good.
So anyway, so did I make that arc make sense? Is the decline of male responsibility his responsibility is direct and sexual interaction is direct. So, but if you can circumvent those two things, you end up with non-cooperation, which ends up with population collapse. Right, because it doesn't. That's all that happens. And people think it's like belief and opinion. It's not. It's just math. Physics at human scale. And we sit here, we talk about this stuff, and we laugh because we know, because when you talk about it to normal people, they think you're talking smack.
Right.
Right. They think it's just math. You know,
the dismissal sounds like this. Well, everybody's entitled to their opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, okay, I just talked about math and now you talked about opinion, and you know what? These two things will never meet.
So it's like, there's the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation series of science fiction books, which I've actually never read.
Wait, Foundation is Asimov.
Asimov's Foundation series, and they've made it into a series now. And so it's coming out. So but in the thing that I ran into a lot was that when I first started working on this back, and then I first started getting popular, I think it was 13 or 14, I had a bunch of people saying, you're basically saying Harry Seldon's equations are possible. Well, yeah, they are. I mean, I'm not saying they're not impossible, but that's the same thing I say with economics, is directions are determinable, but timing is not.
Right.
Right. So there's a very loose math you apply to these things with a very large number of variables.
That's right.
But our work is very much in that vein, which is it sounds like English, but it's math. And then you got to explain to the people the difference between sets, mathematics, and computation. Right. And that these things are different in capacity to describe different things, sets, ordinal, membership, mathematic continuity, and computation discreteness. And so what we're doing is we're describing discreteness. But not only is it not discrete mathematics, it's actually, in other words, cardinal mathematics. It's actually positional mathematics, or like ordinal.
Right.
And that means that things are just relative to one another, basically by triangulation. It's like the Sesame Street game, right?
Yes.
A lot of things are less and more, and they're basically supply-demand curves. And so we just overlay all these supply-demand curves. Really, that's what we do, right? We do it by thinking through them systematically. But in real terms, we're just overlaying supply-demand curves, right? Layers of supply-demand curves. And so what I'm saying is, you don't think we're doing math because it sounds like English, but you forget that the number 5 is the name of the 5th position.
5. Yeah.
Right. And we're talking about amorality as 0 on a scale from -3 to +3, and so which is positionally amoral, ethical, moral, virtuous, right? In the opposite direction, down to evil. Right? So they can't comprehend that it's all math. And then when I tell them that's because you can't comprehend that all language is measurement. Now, so you can tell this to somebody, and their fucking head is exploding. They just give up, right? I mean,
right, meltdown.
They give up. They don't understand that. Well, you mean you're doing set mathematics. He's doing cardinal mathematics. And essentially, we're doing supply-demand mathematics, right? It's much more sophisticated kind of mathematics, right? I mean, because you say, well, you get pretty sophisticated with set mathematics. You get pretty sophisticated with cardinal mathematics. You get pretty sophisticated with positional ordinal mathematics, right? So, but the difference is that they're just terms and operations, and what kind of projections. This is the important part. What kind of summary you use to be able to measure the thing. So in order to make it simple for people, I didn't take the mathematical route, which is what you would expect me to do, right? Is to try to develop a pseudo mathematics to pretend I'm intellectually competent and then I've discovered some miracle here. No, I'm just doing the calculations in the language that the calculations demand. And the only thing we've done is we've said it's a set of do it as a set of checklists.
Right.
Right. If you satisfy the checklist, it's not false. In other words, you've run all the, but that's the same thing as geometry, is saying I've only got a ruler, a pencil, and a protractor, and or straight edge and a protractor and a pencil. And can I figure out how to do this with right triangles? Right. But that's all math. Really, that's what math is. Right. Is can I do this with triangles? Right. It's just a really complex way of figuring out how to do this with triangles. Right. So all we're doing is the same thing. The difference is we're using supply demand diagrams, which is triangular, right?
Right.
Variation between them. We always talk about the distribution. So that's all we're doing. So and like people think we're, I realize the challenge, but I'm also like trying to come to terms with how frustrating it is that, you could tell people the answer. That's how I always tell people, if God spoke to you, why the hell do you think you'd understand it? The primary reason I don't believe anybody's ever talked to God, other than the way you and I talk to God, is there's no fucking way you'd understand a word he said.
I swear to God, I'm sitting there, I'm driving the U-Haul truck yesterday, and I'm driving around and I'm thinking, I'm starting to understand Curt when he says people dealing with ideals, they're dealing in an ideal world that is based on set theory. And I'm understanding that. And I'm like, just to be able to understand it well enough to understand it. And it was like, that's very interesting.
Well, and for me, it's comforting because I can talk to you and you understand, right? I mean, it's just, and so the problem is once you see what I call the grammars, right? This is the same thing, right? I mean, it's just the binary amplitude, just a term.
Right, but that was so disturbing to me because I'm like this. It's like, so the set theory people, you make a calculus like an equation, about something or somebody, and it's like, oh, that means they're bad. You go right? Doesn't that make sense? It's like, no, that means they're good. Right? And that's why that's the paradox of this leftist nonsense. It's like this. Oh, that means they're bad.
Yeah.
Like set theory. And I'm understanding it, and it's dismaying.
It's dismaying, right? Okay, when I used to tell you it was depressing or demoralizing or humiliating.
That emotion.
It's that emotion, right? And so now you're like walking around, you're talking in sets, right? I mean, and you don't realize that it's like being an alien from another. The person doesn't. We're basically aliens from another planet, or it'd be like taking a person today and sending them back to 1540. Right?
I'm sorry. Right. So look, it goes to the guns. Okay. And it goes to the guns because the guns are bad. And it's like holding the material object to be responsible for something. Right?
Right.
Guns are responsible for gun crime.
Well, so let's show a little empathy for the neurotic. Them in mind, okay? I know it's hard because we show tolerance for it all the time, and being asked, and we get exasperated by their abuse of our tolerance. And then you say, well, now that your tolerance is abused, now try to be empathetic. You're like, hell with that. I want to smack over the head.
Right.
But so let's be realistic. It showed us that one of the things, like, I was in therapy for a while where somebody says, you have extraordinary mindfulness. It's not common. which is why I think of you too. Right? I think you're better than I am, right? And so, but the problem is, that's some, and Luke, not Luke, Noah was making a big deal about this the other day too. Is it, that's not common. So when somebody, and we always project, we generalize to others, and empathic people project more than we do.
Right.
Right. And so they're sitting there and they're like, I have this huge impulsivity that I can't control. They're assuming you and I have that same problem, impulsivity we can't control. When we don't have that problem. We might have the opposite problem. We're not impulsive, right? We're analytic to the point where it exasperates them, right? So when they think of guns, they think of people as emotionally and regulatorily unstable as they are. And so they're projecting that instability on the actions of others. Now, because I have trained a bunch of women who were fairly afraid of guns, how to shoot guns, and of course it goes away in 3 days, right? Oh, I get it. This is really quite easy, and because the rules are really quite easy. Basically, don't point at anything you don't want to kill, no matter what you think it's going on. If you point at something, it's dead, right?
Right.
That's number one. You don't put your finger on the trigger unless you want something dead, right? And the rest of the time, don't touch it. I mean, there's a couple of rules there.
Very simple.
It's very simple, and if you want to hit what you're looking at, you focus on the thing, not the sights, and there's about it, right? So there's and once they get over the bang, they're like, oh, because they feel empowered. But the fear in some people, we've seen it in males, like the guy goes, oh, right. And you see it in some women, is that they're like, they can't get over the fear to do it.
Oh.
Whereas some women can get over the fear to do it. So, but that's just a really clear example of what it takes. Like, you see women who carry, they're confident, they're not afraid, their neuroticism goes down. It produces a kind of mindfulness, right? Just like it does in you and me, right? I mean, I'm carrying, I feel pretty comfortable, right? I know that, first of all, I don't want to get in any trouble, so I'm going to avoid any conflict, right? And I have to avoid conflict more so precisely because I'm carrying, right? And the second thing is that if anybody wants to do something in my life, is I'm in control of my destiny. And having chased people with shotgun, they run really fast. I can tell you. You never.
It's something about motivation.
If you want to see, what are the guys who cook meth in the woods in the Northwest? If you want to see how fast you can chase meth heads off your property, you just run at them with a shotgun. They move really fast. It's amazing. You don't think people can run that fast? Inspiration. So, I think that this goes back to Luke's, I'm trying to tie this together, Luke's basic thing of basic human competency. My thing is, I wish he'd do one on, he'd add to his basic human competency weapons, right? Because that fear would go away, because these people are neurotic, right? They may not be able to get over it. If they can't get over it, that's a test of their mindfulness, their self-control. It's not a test of the weapon. It's a test of them projecting onto others the same psychological, emotional, and self-regulatory irresponsibility that they have, and they bear. So they can't. I mean, if a woman's that I love the word. I got a woman pissed off at me yesterday by using the word hysterics. That's the classical term for. That's actually the classical term. They've tried to launder that term out of the discourse. The classical term for women is hysterics, right? And they've tried to launder it in psychology or whatever, but that's the. And so, if you get
stemming from the uterus is what it means.
Anyway, you can't get the hysterics. I mean, hysterics. You can't take them seriously, because all a hysterical person is, somebody who's prone to hysterics. All they're doing is saying, I'm not emotionally and psychologically stable. But they're off the table. I'm like, okay, well, you're afraid of this, but what aren't you afraid of, dear? Because
Right.
you're a hystericist, right? I mean, so, and we know that around 40% of women have this problem. I mean, it's a
Wow.
large number of women have this problem. And under duress, like 80% of them have the problem. I mean, which you'll find out if you ever get in a really nasty situation with a bunch of women. That's where they start making shit up that's not true and telling stories and magical thinking and whatever, which I've been through. So
Right.
anyway, hysterics is the problem, is the end result of higher neuroticism. And so we could, excuse me, sneeze, if we should, and could treat hysterics like we do other mental illnesses, and say, well, you just brought yourself out of the voting pool. Because if you're open to hysterics, then you're not open to self-regulation, which means you're not capable of rational judgment. So, but we should take it the other way and say, I understand why those people with high neuroticism, insecurity, and hysterics, I understand why they're very afraid of these things that go boom, because they're not confident that they wouldn't do something stupid with them. So they're not confident other people wouldn't do stupid with them. When some of us in general just don't do stupid things. I don't know, thought I would stick that last bit in there and see.
We seek to avoid doing stupid things.
Anyway, so I don't know, did I make my point there? I always have to ask you if I made my point.
Does it make you feel better?
Well, I have no fucking idea. Damn it. Getting the curses, trying to get the curses down, Dr. Brad. And I've caught, I've slipped a whole bunch of times in this video already. You're laughing at me, like always.
A little bit. I find you amusing. Oh Lord.
So anyway, how do we get on? We got onto that through.
We're talking about the issue is this medieval premise of holding material being responsible for actions of human beings. Right? Which is funny.
You brought up the gun thing, right? I was finishing some arc and you brought up the gun thing, and I'm like, okay, this will be fun. But I forgot whatever arc I was on.
We were talking about sets and ideals.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, now we have the set people. Now we got to go to the stare people. That's actually a great example between the people who can't do sets.
Right.
Anyway, so have we had a bit of a laugh this morning? All right,
a little bit. That was good.
So do you have anything else you want to go over?
No, like I said, I'm a little bit in shock from this Russian news thing, and I'm okay having to process information, and so I'm as I say, a little bit disjointed from my last 24 hours experience and reassembling.
Well, what happened? I fell asleep. I had a weird night again, but so I woke up like at 8 or 9, and this was going on. Not about a couple night. Up all night with it.
Right.
I slept for another couple hours this morning because, of course, there's this lull in late. There's a time delay thing.
Right.
And what's really interesting is how poor the information is coming out. How poor, the poor quality of information. Whereas if this were going on in America, I'd be like, an idiot on every street corner with a. Well, I haven't gone over to the TikTok side of the world to see what happens over there. But all right. So anyway, so should we try to get some work done, or is it
you can do that?
Is it impossible to get work done today?
I think we can do that.
I'm not gonna. I'm gonna try to support your delusion.
Do you want to try that?
I think there's no harm in trying.
Okay.
I don't know how much juice I got, but we're gonna try. So I'm in rights, now I have to go to
Right, because I think it's a good effort to attempt to provide some calculations despite the provocations of an unstable world. We attempt to make forward progress. You're thinking about it.
Well, of course, I would like at 4 o'clock in every afternoon when I start to get really tired,
Right.
I'm like, we're making great progress. I just want to move faster. And then I get a little depressed, and then I think about how much work we have left. Then I think about all the morons in the world, and I'm thinking, Jesus, well, are we fucking crazy? Are we crazy? And then I said to myself, it's a moral obligation. I got to do it anyway. 'Cause if we don't do it, then who will?
Doesn't get done.
So, and that despite the slings and arrows of social media, which is a beautiful data set, right? I mean, AIs are out there scraping the universe for their level of understanding, but we're out there scraping it for 10 orders of magnitude and much more precise understanding, because it can't do disambiguatory logic like we can. I mean, it might get there, not looking very healthy right now. So it might have been, but no, we're sitting here going through all this detail, and social media is it gives you a lot of insight. This is the irony. We might call it a paradox, the irony of the fact that the reason we are so good at detecting the breadth of human ignorance, error, bias, and deceit is because it's so pervasive on social media.
Right.
And it's uncurated. Whereas the curatorial history of publications, which are in writing, tends to launder a lot of that ignorance, error, bias, deceit, pettiness, magical thinking, and other stupid stuff from it. And
right.
so
It tends to be smoothed over.
Right. And so we're able to see this filth of the waste product of human neurochemistry, right? I mean, this filth we call ignorance, error, bias, deceit, fraud, sedition, undermining, all those other junk.
Right, unrefined.
So it's like, in economics, we call it slumming. And I'm beginning to feel like we're like the sewer cleaners of the American mind. So it's
hazmat suits for everybody.
It's just awful. And it's like, well, then I say to myself, well, it's a good thing we are relatively stoic in these things, because we can hold our noses in the sewer and because we have the feeling that we're actually cleaning it, or at least someday it'll get clean if we keep
That's
at
right.
it.
That's right.
And so the problem is that the people out there dumping the neural fecal matter into the court of public opinion, they're just doing the same thing they do when they flush the toilet. I mean, it's just a natural thing for them to excrete their
right. They got to do it.
They can't. Right. So it's so aggravating. But then you get up to the point where you say, well, two things. You have one thing, which is the endless frustration of knowing just how far a leap it is. Right. Right. And it's not the same as when people were dealing with the church. They didn't feel the church was bad. They didn't think religion was bad. But we think, and we're correct, that this Marxist sequence is evil.
Yes.
right? The worst they thought was the church was inhibitory or maybe corrupt, right? But they didn't think religion was bad, whereas we look at the Marxist thing and they're like, this is sick. This is the
That's right. This is a
mental illness.
dangerous, malicious influence.
So we have that difference, right? But what's the incentive for people to not want to buy into this Marxist sequence cult?
Mm.
Right? I mean, it's basically the promise of irresponsibility. When what is white?
And reward for it.
Right. So then I look at it and I'm like, well, who else is going to do it if we don't? Right. And I take some joy. It's like, well, at least my mental house will be clean, right? My friends' mental houses will be clean. And maybe everyone else wants to continue in the mental sewer, right? I mean, swimming the mental sewer.
And that's okay.
That's okay. But, and so I would like us to finish this. We're going to, obviously, because we're moving too quickly now not to. But on the other hand, and I would like to get it published and out in people's hands, so it can be good to do its work. On the other hand, I'm stuck with, we just talked about a thing which was sets, computations, mathematics, right? I mean, sets, actions, continuity, right? Or it could be, depending on which way I would want to do it, I would do it actions, sets, continuity, which is how I would look at the sequence, because of greatest precision, right?
Right.
Even though that's not how it's evolved from sets to math to computation. So, or you can look at it triangularly, right? So I'm looking at this thing and saying, how are we gonna explain something that's effing complicated to people who basically are like good, bad. I mean, that they're the equivalent of clicks and grunts, right? But they do it with polysyllables. They have no understanding of. So it's like futile hurling. It's like that. One of my favorite comics by B. Cliven. I don't know if he was a popular comic maker back in the day. Did Cats and all sorts of things. A lot of my humor is based on B. Cliven humor, and because it's ironic. And so there was a guy with was trying to throw a ball, and the ball was attached to a chain, and the chain was attached to his ankle. Right, so every time he threw the ball, of course, he ended up on his face, and the ball didn't go anywhere. Right. Well, I mean, it's like futile hurling. I mean, it's just like no, it's not going to go anywhere. So is there hope? Well, I mean,
there is hope, and the issue is that the completion of the task creates the opportunity for escape.
True. All right, so we're going to go into section 2, wave Brad's cup. See, and we're going to try to do some work and keep up our spirits despite we are at a heroic task.
Yes,
I am not quite sure whether we're Hercules and going to succeed or Sisyphus.
Oh my.
But I'm willing to try because it's the moral thing to do.
Nothing better to do.
Well, the only, the positive byproduct is at least you understand.
Right.
All right, so I'm going to go back to sharing. Is that all right? You ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
I'm going to try to not bore you this time. You can tell me when you want to stop. Curt, I've had enough.
When I tap out.
I can't take it anymore. Stop. You've scrolled so many times. I feel like nauseous.
All right.
All right.
All the little tabs on top.
Yes, all the many of them. Can I shrink some of these? Yes. keep adding to them, it's not helping.
It's
I have all my little projects in here, and I have the other ones,
in other places.
not other ones, so this is mine. All right, so we're always working on this, which we then will move into the book, so. All right, we're looking at the first, make sure we've got all the first principles down, we're saying our goals are defined, evolutionary computation, the logic that results from it, the hierarchy of paradigms that result in the hierarchy of grammars that apply that ternary logic to describe each of those paradigms, right? So it's and so therefore we can produce a universal logic uniting the sciences, and that science we call logic to describe them, and as a universal constructive operational logic falsification, which we can use then to test the testified ability of all truth claims until they're treated false and falsify them. And we went through the physical universe, which consists of discrete existence, differentiation, accumulation. That doesn't need to be explained right there until I interview, what's his name? Acquisition. Therefore, we get to acquisition, then from that we get to cooperation, then to scale, then to persistence, producing our end results or desires are. And then therefore the ternary logic of computation. Now, and then the universal grammar. And then we summarize, and therefore we produce the hierarchy of the ternary logic of first principles. We start going into man acquires, etc. We build up from there. So this is the last time we talked.
Yes.
The last time we met our intrepid. What is that? When last we left our intrepid adventurers. That's what I don't know, I don't know what TV 60s TV show where that's from, because I don't have the post-war deep voice narrator. When last we left our intrepid adventurers, it's probably Batman or something stupid, I can't remember. All right. We are trying to get through, we have gotten through without this, the physical world. And what we were trying to, oh boy, I gotta get my head into space again. Therefore, we're trying to define acquisition, cooperation, scale, persistence, right? And so I think we might have to go through this a bit in order to get back in the mind.
Contextualize it.
Right, contextualize it. So there exists accumulation, there exists an opportunity for innovation and adaptation by evolution. The universe performs discrete concrete operations that produce concentration of energy density, producing discrete state changes that accumulate in continuous recursive accumulation of energy density, correct? Each increase in stable relations of persistent energy density produces additional opportunity for new recombinations.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so this is cooperation, anthropocentric term. Yeah, but
Right.
is that below here? The universe accumulates. Wasn't this the same with acquisition? So this isn't, this is a physical process.
Yes. Hmm. Which is an interesting function because it's like a physical process is a physical operation, and a behavioral cooperation is a psychological operation.
Right. Might be deterministic.
Hmm. Now, my comment on that is the interesting function of it is it just looks deterministic to you because it's an aggregation of so many Pachenko balls, and in your personal experience, there's just one Pachenko ball.
Yes.
And it looks, you say free will. It makes you feel better.
Great. Go ahead.
Okay. That was me making fun of our botness.
Yeah.
That's my reaction to the botness of it.
All right.
Now, okay.
Go ahead. You want to say something?
No, I'm good. But these are psychological operations behaviors. Is that correct?
You'd call this psychological and this social?
No, I'm trying to distinguish between acquisition and accumulation. Acquisition is behavioral, right?
Yep.
It's a psychological, is as opposed to it's a living thing versus
Oh, I see.
accumulation.
Voluntary. Psychological. I see what you're saying. It's autonomic, right? Right.
I see. Yeah. So that, yeah, to distinguish between them.
This would be. I don't know whether this says adversarial or supply demand.
Hmm.
autonomic, deterministic, psychological, involuntary, behavioral, political, adversarial. Like this isn't right. It's social.
Hmm.
I'm wondering if we should break the political out here. It's the organization and skill. You see what I'm getting at?
Say that again.
Well, behavioral, social, adversarial. So this is social. We have psychological, which is individual.
Right.
It's social, right? These are political.
Right.
Can we break out political?
After organizations. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Copied it.
Yeah.
Political. I'm so disciplined about how I take care of the fruit I buy, and I still once in a while get a fruit fly. Drives me
Right.
nuts. Wash it.
They're amazing. Spontaneous generation being what it is.
Well, it's actually disgusting if you think about it too much, but whatever.
Oh my.
All right, I think we did a good job there.
Okay.
Then I have to ask what I'm doing here is I've done cooperation, I'm intentionally using this term.
Right.
That's okay. We don't have to think about it anymore once we get up here. Okay, fine. I'm generalizing cooperation. And then I'm giving the hierarchy.
Right. Hmm.
And this is discovery. The cooperation increases. I found it before Brad did.
With no, I just didn't mention it.
You just
I said I didn't want
I
to.
never get to win.
I didn't want to interfere with your flow.
Damn it.
It bothered me a little bit, but it's an impulse control issue. I did it for Uncle Kenny.
Evil.
Oh Lord.
All right, so. All right, my head is almost in the space where I can get there. All right, so therefore cooperation by means of the general rule, right? That's the general rule by means of. And this is the same by means of. What's the general rule?
Hmm.
We run into this issue every now and then. I'm doing all this so I can fill in that top line.
I respect that.
Exasperating. This needs to summarize. Just test this in 1 second. Keep testing what it knows about me. It keeps getting worse.
What do you mean by that?
Little's work as controversial has been criticized for its complexity, its reliance on redefined terms, and its potential for promoting exclusionary and discriminatory policies. His ideas have been associated with the alt-right and nationalist movements that Doolittle himself. The state does not align with any political group.
Hmm.
It's not false. It's just not correct.
What's interesting is like that that's it's not incorrect. It's what's interesting about it is it's certainly biased.
And biased and as such misleading. If it said here, Doolittle's objective is to, I would be okay. Right, with all the criticism, if it says, well, we're trying to do. Doolittle argues Western was largely due to its unique emphasis on property rights. That's not true. And he proposes a revised form of libertarianism. Well, that's a good dummies version. I'm okay with that.
It is watered down to an exceptional degree.
You know, that's what it does, right? It generalizes. So some arguing about the church not suppressing science. Well, I mean, that's like saying the communists didn't suppress science. Or it's like saying the modern academy doesn't suppress science.
Wait, what was this?
Which science? Right, and which science are you talking about? Because it say science like it suppresses all science. It doesn't suppress all science. It suppresses science that disagreed with the dogma, right? The church's foundations. And I'm like, well, you know, it's not, and you're like worried about the fact that it's suppressing science. And I'm like, no, I'm actually the problem was the suppression of literacy, right? It was what bothered me, right? Or the non-advocacy of literacy. Because they were people could read the Bible themselves. They'd
put us out of a job.
They put us out of the job and figure out what the Protestants did. All right. So define acquisition. Yeah, well,
it didn't do it.
Well, I think it's, oh no, it didn't.
Oh.
It logs you out if you, like, I have these different computers, so it logs you out if you. So it's in the context of property.
Yeah.
So we have to etymology.
What a strange thing.
To one's possessions. Okay, so I just want to make sure I had to make the prevarication there. Right. So we do need to make this. All right, so we have accumulation, acquisition, cooperation. Oh, scale. All right. Great. All right, so I think if I try to solve this, we try to solve this first. We might get frustrated. Maybe solve the other one. The second. Let's do that. All cooperation with subatomic matter, biological, sentient, or CONSCIOUS. Is that right?
Yes.
Why is it with function? Is explainable. Outdent this. Let's not do it that way.
What's that?
Well, indent or outdent
Oh.
this or indent everything below it. Outdent, keep the.
Right. Keep from too much drift.
Yes, sir. God knows our conversation drifts
It can drift.
questionable directions as it is. All right.
I thought that the AI did a pretty good job for because it's using the problem is it's using arcane logics, languages, and grammars. And it can only come out with the logics, languages, and grammars that it's coming from, and it's going to be imprecise to that degree. Sorry, that was me drifting.
No, I agree. Okay, so there's something wrong in this.
Okay. What appears to be wrong?
It's something ambiguous. I got to do it again. All cooperation, whether subatomic, matter, biological, sentient, or conscious, is explainable as evolutionary computation by discovery of a consequential utility in the or by the no, it's in that's correct. Conversion, work, or concentration of energy in defeat of entropy, where limits are maintained in the limits of computation. You know what I'm trying to say, and I don't think I'm saying it there.
Okay, what specifically highlighted blue? Where limits are maintained in the limits of the combination? That is sort of ambiguous. So please paraphrase that.
I say this. Just explainable as evolutionary computation by discovery of the concept of genes and the defeated entropy. Well, that's true, but so what? Whatever I was trying to say, or I didn't say.
Is it necessary?
Yeah, there, well, this part's necessary. I'm not sure what how I was trying to, were limits. So basically recombinatory limits. Right, so the set of all combinations. Right. So if I'm in chemistry, there's some set of limits to combination of stable relations.
Right.
I'm trying to put my head back there, and it's not letting me go. Let me see. That's what I want to say. All kind of operation is that. Oh, I see what I was trying to say.
Okay.
That's actually true. It just, nobody's gonna understand what I'm saying. Limits of what? Well, I tried to make a very complex idea there. I wonder if I was just keeping a note for myself. When we tell people it's math, this is like, okay, I'm pondering over what the equation means. I failed at sufficient and disambiguation.
Right? My impression of that phrase, that the energy is contained within the physical structure.
Right, that's the information. I just don't know why I state stable relations over again. Oh, it's as the stable relation. Oh, that's a way, when I write stuff that's way too condensed. This is one of those times.
Okay.
So, you said it correctly.
Which the energy is contained inside the physical structure. The energy is absorbed within the physical structure and maintained as information in a stable relationship with that structure.
Yes.
Is that what you're meaning to say?
Yes. Can you just say it again? Because I didn't write it down.
Right. That the energy is contained within the physical structure as information in a stable relation with that structure. Relationship with that within that structure.
That's good enough. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Say it again.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at. Is I want the point here. This is a feed forward concept. That's what I was trying to get forward. But there's I bring this example up and you amplify it every time. Proteins. Why
Right.
the hell do they do that? Right? Because they're machines, right? I mean, they're physical machines. And there's information held in the structure itself that has information that has utility beyond the charge relation that's being captured by
Yes.
the organization.
But it generates a shape for the structure of the protein, which is a linear function.
Right, and you look at these proteins, right? I mean, I mean,
They can do stuff.
and they're almost incomprehensible. I mean,
Yes.
sometimes you look at stuff that man has made, like you're trying to figure out the wiring diagram of a British Leyland car. I mean, forget it, right? A human might have done that, but there was no sense behind it. Sorry, those who were
I like a backhanded slight on the
that's it.
Brits.
That's a backhanded on for other
That's unusual.
car.
It's noteworthy because it happens so infrequently.
Yeah.
They're not the French, for God's sake.
Well, the French make sense, but they have the worst taste. I mean, it's like the French look at an Italian car and says, "That's beautiful. We can't do that. We need to do the ugly version, underpowered ugly version, the tacky, unusable, ugly, underpowered version." That's the French way of doing things.
Sorry, derailed you a little bit. I apologize.
Oh, I mean, might as well I mean, if we can pick on the French, I mean, I'm all in for it somehow. So that's the point we're trying to make is that I want to be able to carry this concept of information.
Right.
That here I go. As that produces information outside of the
Yes. Right. It has emergent functionality. That's funny right there.
Okay, that was way harder than I thought, but we did it.
Yes. It's just so it's the fascinating functions. I know what you're talking about. Just like, okay, how do you say that? That's hard to say.
It's hard to say. Okay.
I like this. The format is generalized rule and then descriptive of means.
Mm-hmm. We ran into this in means of deception. Well, because it's the same problem, right? Is we have a generalized rule, right?
Right.
And then all the means by which humans apply it. Which we'll come back here. Like this. Oh, it's not far enough yet. Um, oh, I see what was going on. Didn't go far enough. So you have this. You're wasting your time by trying to show you something that I can't find. Right. So
But you're proving that you can't find it. Oh Lord.
you have these things, and then you have the techniques of deceit, and then we have this general rule,
Right.
and then you have all the methods, which are like the logical methods. But here's the failure due diligence. You can do it these three ways. And so let's deal with the logical application first. What's the general rule? Here's the methods that can be used. This is basically a diagram of logic. And then all the ways people abuse this shit. We're amazing liars. I mean,
yes.
So anyway, and it's like recombinations, right? It's just like the system we're describing is that if you don't know the limits, right? What's true, false, whatever, useful, bad, whatever, you could just keep putting Lego pieces together with more and more complex lies. The way the universe puts Lego pieces together, you put more complex molecules, right? I mean, whereas of those subsets, there's only so many that are useful, reciprocal for man.
That's right.
What are we gonna do, Brad?
We're gonna what just arose out of that little discourse in my mind was that the issue is excessive tolerance for lies.
Yes.
And it's like we have to have absolute intolerance.
Right. It's
when
really,
someone's trying to lie to us because they're attempting to glom some nonsense into your informative structure.
well, and so if we say that's true, because it is, right? I mean, the problem is lying, right? So, and the problem is having absolute intolerance for lying. But the problem in history is having a system of measurement from which you can distinguish the two.
Right.
So we're finally producing that system of measurement. People say, well, I'm like, and you say that they said, well, why is that? Well, because sets and math are easier. The general sets, really general, math, sort of general, but deliberate actions and computation, well, that's particular.
Right. And the issue is that the logics, language, and grammars that have got us to this position require an increase of precision of logics, languages, and grammars, because the lies and problems that have been generated by those imprecisions have accumulated to such a degree that are too dangerous to tolerate anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, the AI is insufficient as demonstrated.
Yep. So I'm going to propose we pick up tomorrow on going through organic, asexual, sexual, human, and sentient.
That works.
That was we only fixed a paragraph and then fixed the organization of scale. It's hard work, Brad.
It is work, and it's because it's what's fascinating about it is it has a divine function to it, because it's like you have a divining rod and you're like kind of, oh, the water's like 34 feet down right there.
All right. So we're on for tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have anything you want to close with? Anytime?
No. Hey, you hit like and subscribe and hit notifications and leave all kind of glorious comments, especially about my ability to withhold and not not act on impulses.
which you've become extraordinarily good at, which I admire. I think here's what I'm gonna end up tongue in cheek. So here's what I think the hypothesis is that the real reason you get tired is the suppression of the impulse to interrupt me.
It takes so much work. It's like this well, the well guys just gonna explode. Very good.
All right. All right, I love you,
Thank
man.
you.
We'll get back to work tomorrow. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
sir. Bye-bye.